Hello. Okay, here we are. So, Austrian GP. Well, it's not so easy track to nail. It's just 10 corners. Well, 9 if you just discount that turn 2, which is just a kink before turn 3. 10 corners, but one might think it's a short track. It's easy to get lap time out of it. No, because there's so few corners, there's more chance for you to make a mistake and recover from it. And yeah, Austria again, it's gonna be a pretty high, not pretty high, a pretty low downforce circuit. You want to be running pretty much as low as wings as you can to maximize your straight line speed. There's 3 DRS zones back to back to back. So that's the pit straight, and then the up to turn 3, and then coming out of turn 3 to turn 4. Pretty much half the track is a DRS zone. So if you can keep within someone's DRS range through the middle sector and the last sector, then you have a pretty good chance of saving your ERS, saving your tires, and making the overtake when you need it, and pulling out the gap if you need it as well. Now this year, of course, not like last game, where running high downforce was kind of the meta. You can gain more time in the corners than you lose on the straights. But this year, well, it's kind of the opposite. Even if you reduce your downforce, you still can maintain a good momentum through the corners and gain more straight line speed. So yeah, setup. Let's have a look real quick at this 16, 12 on the wings. Well, pretty mid to low downforce levels here. I'll say if it's mid level, it's somewhere around the 20s, 25s. That's like mid downforce level. Austria, you definitely need to go lower. The lower you go, the better it is. Of course, if you have like significant pace advantage of someone, you can always try to go even lower so that you're bulletproof on the straights. And in the corners, you can just park the bars, or you can go the other way as well. If you're pretty quick compared to someone, say you're half a second ahead of someone, you can possibly try 1 or 2 clicks high downforce so that you look after your tires better. At the same time, you have the cornering speed that you need to pull away. Then again, it all comes down to how much ERS regen you want. So always go into a practice session in a Grand Prix mode, or even a practice race in Grand Prix mode or online. Then whatever setup you have, just run the wings that you have and make sure you have enough battery recharging per lap without using DRS. So I'd say somewhere around 3 to 5% is pretty much considered a luxury on most tracks in this game. So if you can regen about that much, that's pretty. If you can regen more, that's even better. The more you have, the better it is. So 16-12 is where I'll start. You can always try lower, but the catch is when you go lower downforce, you have a bit more sliding in the car, which generates more tire wear. That's one thing to remember. All right, unless if it's a mixed condition race, you may want to consider maybe 1 or 2 clicks higher downforce so that you are equally good in the intermediates or wets, and also when it becomes dry, you still have a good amount of grip in your tires. Now transmission, pretty much the same as always. You can run 55 on throttle, you can run 60 on throttle. I found it for my liking 60 was just nice because it gave me better traction, especially out of turn 3, which is the slowest corner on the track. It's a very important traction zone. If you get a good traction out of there, you can get an overtake done into turn 4. Again, coming out of turn 1 also, you need some good traction out of it. If you have good setup, you can follow someone pretty easily. You can force them into a defensive life into turn 3, and then you can overtake into turn 4. Always a good try there. 51 off throttle. This is just to keep the car a bit balanced, because when I have 50 off throttle, what's going to do is allow the rear to move a bit more in high speed. We don't want that too much in high speed because, well, if you look at Austria, it's all high speed apart from turn 3 and turn 4, and everywhere else the car is taking the corners at very high speed and low aero as well, so the car is gonna be feeling a little bit wobbly. 51 off throttle fixes that, and somewhat helps in getting a good traction as well, because your rears are already a bit more locked coming into the corner and coming out of the corner. Great, so 60, 51 around there, just try it. You can go higher, but I would not recommend this, especially in the third sector, because this generates a lot of understeer. You can try 55 in the middle sector and the last sector, because it's sort of an okay balance to try this. Suspension geometry, again, right, left, left. Minimum toe, minimum camber always works in all tracks. Keep it that way. Suspension, here's where I've made some of my changes. As always, I like to say suspension is where you can make changes to suit your handling, the way you want the car to handle. Aerodynamics is going to give you the majority of your lap time. All right, affects your tire wear, this and that, blah blah blah, affects your ERS regen. But suspension, it really complements your driving style and the aero setup that you have. uh, you know, commonly you see, rear suspension and rear anti-roll bar always at one. That is to give you best stability on the rears, because the rears are very snappy this year. Traction is pretty difficult as well. You want to make sure the rear anti-roll bar and suspension are at one, the softest as they can go, so that you don't get too much wheel spin. You will get a bit, but if you can control it, this will help you even more. Suspension on the front, very soft too. This is so that the car really turns it into the corner, not really just on high speed but also in slow speed. Well, I've tried a few things here and there. I've tried going higher and all, but the car was just a little bit sluggish. So what I mean by sluggish is, say the middle sector, the double left-hander, right? When I turn the car in initially, it's not biting into the corner. So it's either I run more downforce on the front or I soften the suspension. So I want to go for more straight line speed, so I have to compromise on the suspension, make it soft on the front so that the front has more grip. Same on the front anti-roll bar. The softer you go, the more grip you have. You kind of feel it more in the mid corner and high speed corners, and on the exit as well, you can feel the difference if you have a soft versus stiff anti-roll bar. The stiff is going to make your car a little bit understeer on exit, and when you put down the power again, if you go softer, it will allow the front of the car to bite more into the track, so you generate more front grip. Now if you have too much front grip, not necessarily a bad thing. You can always change around the downforce levels of your car, but if you don't want to touch it anymore, if you have too much front grip, you can sort of reduce it by going higher on the front anti-roll bar. All right, so that's how you play around with this. So I like to keep it soft quite recently, because I found it to be a bit more consistent in giving more time. I used to run very high anti-roll bars and suspension before this, if you remember, in the earlier setups. But I'll explain why it may be useful in some tracks, why it may not be useful in some tracks. A track like this seems to work, and it's quite bumpy as well, so you want to run it softer. Ride height, yes, the magical ride height. Not so much as effective in real life, where in real life, the lower you go, the more downforce you generate on the car, but at the same time you risk of bottoming out. In the game, you don't really bottom out that much in high speed or low speed even, so you can run pretty low ride height on the rear. 4 is just nice. 3 is what the world record was running, but that is super snappy. Not say snappy, I mean it has good amount of grip, but I found that going up to 4 just made the rear a bit more stable in high speed, so allowed me to put on the power much faster. Again, it may come down to personal preference. If you are more precise with your throttle inputs and you feel you can go lower and not bottom out on acceleration and whatnot, go for it, because it's going to be much, you can feel the grip a little bit more. Front ride height, again, it's just a matter of balancing between how much straight line speed you want, how much cornering speed you want. Again, aerodynamics is the main one that's gonna set the amount of downforce you have, how much turning you have on the front with the amount of aero. So I'm running 16, so it's going to give me X amount of downforce. If I go lower on the front ride height, it's going to give me even more front end grip. All right, so but what's that going to cost? It's going to cost the front to be very low to the ground. That's going to reduce my straight line speed. It's going to be scripting the floor a bit more. Around 4, it starts to script the floor when you're around 305 kph onwards. Yeah, so the loss is very minimal compared to the time that you gain in sector 2 and 3. That's why I went with a very low front ride height. I tried 5, 6, 7, all those variations with different wing setups, just to see if I can find time in the middle sector and at the same time maintain or get even more straight line speed, but I didn't really found a good compromise. So if you do, you can go for it, but otherwise you can stick with this. 4 on the front ride height gives you good turn in high speed and low speed, especially in sector 2 and 3. You'll notice it even more. So you can just try 7 and then you try with 4. You will notice the difference in the middle sector. Brakes 150 always, keep it the same. Not really a thing to change in this game, but I will recommend 51 brake bias for turn 1 and turn 3 because these are uphill corners. When you go uphill, naturally the the weight of the car shifts backwards, and if you're braking at 50% brake bias, it may spin your rear off. So you want to make sure you push the brake bias slightly forward so you don't really spin out your car. Remember to turn it back to 50 for the rest of the lap. In qualifying, this is definitely useful because you want to be running very aggressive front wing, maybe 1 or 2 clicks even more, but at the same time you don't want to spin out, so 51 will be useful. Tyre pressures, here you go, a little bit magical here. 3 DRS zones, so it's pretty much just 3 straights and then few corners in between. Slow corner at turn 3, you won't really be heating up your tires that much. Middle sector, if you're following someone, you're not really pushing, you won't really be gaining that much tire temps. So if you can just manage it at the start of your race, the tire temperatures will be fine. So running slightly higher pressures will also improve your tire wear. That means you get less tire wear. But if you go too high on the pressures, you'll get overheating. When you reach around 99, 100, you still have some decent amount of grip, but you'll start to lose very small amount of time. You'll notice that. And then when you exceed 100 degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, around there, you'll start to overheat the tires. That's why you really lose a lot of time. And when you exceed 104, 105, that's when you know you're in trouble. If your fronts overheat, you'll have understeer. If your rears overheat, you'll have oversteer. If you have both, your car is going to be undrivable. Best bet is just go into the pits and change to a harder compound. So you want to make sure your tire pressures are correct before the start of the race. It is safer to just go minimum front and 2 clicks on the rear in this track, and you'll be fine. But if you have done some practice runs and you found what's the ideal tire pressures you want to run, then go for it. So I'm recommending 1 click on the front just to give it a bit of responsiveness in the high speed in sector 2 and 3, so the car just responds more to my inputs much quicker. On the rear as well, it's a matter of stability. The higher pressure you have on the rear, the more stable it's going to be in high speed. Too low and it will start to spin out your rears. But there you go. Now let's just quickly save this before we forget once again. And here you go. Austria setup. 1612 on the wings. You can always try lower at the catch off, getting more tire wear. You can go higher at the catch off, possibly losing more straight line speed. But at the same time, if it's a wet condition, you want to start maybe somewhere in between. Just compromise for both conditions. If it's going to be fully inters all the way, I'll say start with like +5 each wing. So 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5. All right. And if it's full wets, you can even run the same setup because traction is going to be more important. The track becomes from dry to inters or wets. When it's raining, this track becomes more of a medium and slow speed track, so you will be needing a lot of mechanical grip and aerodynamic grip. So this will help you in the wets. Otherwise, in the dries, keep it as it is. You'll be fine all the way. 60 51 on the differential. You can try 50 in qualifying if you want to just experiment with it. If you have 3 runs, try 50 on the first run, try 51 on the next run, and then decide which one is better for you for the third run. Suspension geometry, no changes to this. You don't want to mess around with this. Suspension 2-1. If you have a little bit of confidence issues on the car, if it's like a little too unstable, when you're throwing it into corners, you may want to raise the front suspension to make it a bit more controllable. If you can control it, go lower. I wouldn't say go 1 because then it starts to feel too wobbly. 2 is just nice. I'd say start at 2. Rears, keep it at 1. Front roll bar, if you have a lot of mid corner understeer, you're trying to go on power, and for some reason, let's say you decide to lower your downforce on the front, you're gonna get less front end grip. You have to reduce your front anti roll bar as well, so that you get adequate amount of turning in the middle sector. Right? It's all about balancing. You add this, you remove that. Okay, ride height, keep it at 4.4. You can also try 5.5, which was just nice as I tried it. If it's gonna rain, or if a mixed condition race, start with 5.5 because it's a very good ground clearance ride height to have in the wets, so you do not spin out your car that easily. And it's pretty much about the same in the dries as well. 5.5 and 4.4, not much difference. And brakes keep it the same. Tyre pressures start like this. If it's gonna be a full wet race or full intense race, I'll say start slightly higher, maybe whatever pressure that you have for your dry, just go one click higher on all tires. This will give you extra tire life because your tires will last longer, and at the same time, you know, having a little bit more heat in the tires, just make sure the tires are grippy. And yeah, there you go. Austria setup is done. Have fun with it. Not an easy track to nail, but race pace is more important here. It's easy to overtake, so race pace is going to be crucial. Make sure you practice. Till then, stay safe, take care everyone, and in case you were wondering what happened to my finger, no, it's not dead or anything. It's just some ink. We just had general elections today, and yeah, so I voted. I did my responsibility. See you later. Ciao.